So I'm going to do a quick intro of probably one of the most prolific marketers who's ever lived, Dan Kennedy. The story of in the sales letter that Roy wrote is all true. Dan sent me a one-page. Dan doesn't do email. Dan he does fax and FedEx. Sent me a FedEx letter in a one-page letter that was so beautiful, waxing poetic about what Marty meant, not only as a direct marketer but as an entrepreneur. And that's why I wanted to set the stage with the first session today. That didn't have to be just about direct response. It really needed to be about entrepreneurship and the kinds of things that Dan believes in. And so Dan's letter to me is what got the party started. Dan then did a bunch of blogs, and not blogs, he doesn't go on the internet too much, but he did some letters, and this was Dan on the 4 pillars that I talked about. So on outworking everyone. Work is the truth behind most exceptional people. Curiosity is another thing in decline. There is a lot of opportunity and benefit from being with smarter people. And lifting others separates you from the masses of threatened, anxious, and selfish people. And he kind of put those, and when he started sending that to people, I said, this is fantastic. I called him. I didn't call him. I think I faxed him. And I said, we really should do an event. And that's how it all started. I would say that as people know me as T-Rex, the dinosaur in the Wild Wild West. So I own the URL dinosaurandcowboys.com. And so I'm the I'm the T-Rex riding, or I'm the cowboy riding the T-Rex. But as I've gone around the industry and internet conferences, I would say there's no one that's even close that says that they attribute their direct marketing and direct response knowledge. More people say Dan Kennedy than any other. And it's by a wide margin. All the other speakers here today are quoted as well. But Dan Kennedy is the number one guy. And I have a quote here from Ken McCarthy, one of our other speakers. He says, as far as info marketing is concerned, we'd all be living in caves, rubbing sticks together if it wasn't for Dan Kennedy. I know I would. The other piece of that is that he's not just an info marketer. This is a direct marketer to the core. And that's why he and Marty were so aligned, even though they kind of swam in different pools to some degree. And yet they saw the same kinds of things, and he is a slave to response, to measurement, to all the things that direct response marketing is all about. So he's going to talk today I'm going to let him do the title. The giveaway is amazing in your briefcase. Don't look at it now. I'm sure Dan's going to reference it. Those of you who know Dan, he doesn't do stuff just because it's thick and by the pound. He does it because it's actionable and usable. And that book is just incredible. He told me he was going to deliver 75 pages. He delivered 250 pages. So he's here for you, the one and only Dan Kennedy.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. I was Sunday. I try not to travel, by the way, so this is relatively rare. Some people have an old picture in their mind of me when I was doing 70 or 80 gigs a year, and that's ancient history. So prying me out to go anywhere now is a major project. Sunday I was actually in New York and then went home. I was in New York for the memorial service of my friend for 22 years, Joan Rivers. And it was a big to-do. There's another big to-do this week in L.A., so they're doing 2 of them because that gets 2 weeks of publicity instead of 1 week of publicity. But so we're in this giant temple, and this is a memorial service. And so the rabbi does what kind of you would expect the rabbi to do. And so there's the 4 seasons of life, and life is like a river, and and poignant, and some people are cheered up. And then there's a handful of people who are each coming up and telling their Joan stories. The first one up is Howard Stern. And so we're at a funeral service, and we're in a temple, and the rabbi has taken a seat back here behind everybody. And Howard starts his presentation with, Joan Rivers had a very dry vagina. Roughly 50% of the people laughed, some of us loud. I also noticed people in stunned silence. This is called, in the business, a disrupt interrupt. It is a known psychological technique by performers, by great copywriters. If you are dealing with people who are likely to be in a particular mood and a particular mindset, and you need them to be open to what it is you are going to present to them, often you will do a disrupt interrupt. I won't do the rest of the Howard bit. It was a bit he and Joan had done on his radio show 2 weeks ago, nor will I give you a full report on the funeral. I just thought I would use it to set up where we are going to go in the time that we have available, which is into the influence of the psyche rather than the detailitis of writing copy. I want to back up, though, just for a couple minutes and do just a tick of housekeeping. So it was nice to get, just the really short. I find now when I speak that often my introductions sound like a eulogy. They're this long-winded historical path. I have been at this whatever the hell this is. I have been at this for 42 years. The first time I got paid to write copy was 42 years ago for Halbert's on a Beat the Control cattle call in Akron, Ohio, where I grew up. I was a junior in high school at the time. And I won, and I got $500. And I later found out, of course, royalties they mailed, I don't know, 500,000 of the damn thing. I don't know how many Monogram beer mugs they sold, but plenty. But at the time, $500, I thought, really? You can get $500 for this? This is, everybody I knew worked. It's like 4 pieces of paper, $500. This is remarkable. It's got to be like the discovery of, say, somebody in a ghetto who first discovers that you can rob a convenience store. It's got to be the same sort of adrenaline rush, that you can go in and say, "Give me your money," and people will hand you the money. It's got to be the same. It's got to be the same sort of feeling. So, for the last 15 years, has a direct marketing consultant / copywriter. I have not billed less than $2 million a year in fees and royalties part-time, and 85% of my clients are repeat or ongoing or periodic, so I must be doing something right. I am going to attempt to do something right here this morning. As to the allusion to fame, just one quick story. Zig Ziglar and I are backstage in the Akron. So how many of you know who Zig is? Actually, I want to know something else. Well, that's good. Okay. By the way, when I do that, you'll learn more if you look at everybody else than if you look at me. So, one of the things, Marty, insatiable curiosity, learn a lesson everywhere. You want to try and be learning all the time and see. Those of you that kept looking at me, you now know nothing about how many people know Zig, and so you didn't learn anything. So we'll try it. There is something I want to know, by the way, before I go very far. So how many of you here are, I don't know, Dan followers, fans, are here maybe because of my encouragement or my influence or because you were going to get a chance to see, all right, a good share of the room. Okay. So Zig and I are backstage at the Akron Civic Theater in the morning before one of our little events. And there's a crappy green room with crappy food and crappy coffee and cockroaches in the corner, and this is at the very we wound up, if you followed that tour at all, we wound up in sports arenas and 20, 25,000, 35,000 people in Tampa was, I think, the record. But this was like a place that holds 5,000. And so the guy who's the volunteer director of the Akron Civic Theater, he is a big fan. So he is hyper-orgasmic that we are there. Okay? He is, I'm sure, physically dripping. He's vibrating. He's just very excited. And he's got stuff for me to sign and stuff for Zig to sign. And he's sort of Velcroed to the two of us. He's a little guy with no real sense of boundaries. And in comes a volunteer, maybe his daughter, I don't know, but a high school-aged girl who's refilling the beverages and the croissants on the craft table. And she's got a razor blade hanging from one ear and a Mike Tyson tattoo over here. And he, vibrates and grabs her and says, you got to meet these people. These are the two most famous sales speakers in the world. Kind of like the nice things Brian said. And she sets her tray of stuff down, and she methodically, slowly, I'm sure it seemed slower than it really was, but she starts at the top of Zig's head, and she looks all the way down to his shoes and all the way back up, much slower than I just did, painfully. And then she does the same thing to me, and then she says to the guy, they don't look famous to me, and picks up her tray and walks back out the room. So I say, I've always been a famous person that nobody's ever heard of, and it's nice to be in a room with people who have. A quick apology, which is violate speaking rule 101. This is stuff assembled just for you, so it's not polished performance art, so you're not going to get that. If you want that, there's a ton of stuff on YouTube, unfortunately. Housekeeping. You do have a big fat book in your bag. You may or may not want it. It doesn't track what I'm going to do, but I am going to show you some stuff that's also in it. You may at least want the reference list in front of you that's on page 41. So if you want to get it out, you might want to. So here's what most thinking about and conversations about copy that sells looks like and sounds like. It's all mechanical. The conversation is often about how many words should be in a headline, and do we flag the audience, do we not flag the audience, how many subheads per page, how do we handle price. It's a big mechanical conversation. It's like talking cars with mechanics. So I own 4 classic cars, and Carla, my wife, is always on me. Why don't we go to a show? I said, I don't want to go to a car show because it's full of car guys. They're going to ask me about the engine. I don't know shit about these cars. I own them because I like to drive them. I'm not a car guy. But the conversation everybody at a car show wants to have is the engine and the pistons and was this part designed by this guy or this guy? Was this from the era when Chrysler was making it, or was this from the era when, I don't know any of that stuff. I don't care about any of that stuff. And people who deal with copy that sells, whether as a writer or as a buyer of it, as a user of it, they get trapped in this same conversation. And one of the ways you'll know you have found, by the way, a barely competent copywriter, and you have found maybe in yourself a barely competent marketer, is if you default to this list of mechanics. So almost all of it defaults to this list. People fall back into discussions, writing, pitching, presenting the product or the service, the features translated into benefits, right? Giving it credibility and believability. What are the facts about the thing? What's the proposition itself? How do we structure the proposition? Do we start with the highest price and drop down? Do we start with the lowest price and build up and then discount it? That's what everybody defaults to. If you are a fairly astute analyst, you can look at most sales copy and you can see, dated reference, spoiler alert, you can see the yellow feet from the Fred Astaire dance school that you're supposed to walk underneath the copy. You can see it if you're a decent analyst. Okay? In somebody's video sales letter, in their print sales letter, in any media, I can instantly see, oh, here's the structure they used. I get it. I can see the yellow feet. All right? And you can also often deduce the school of. So you can spot an Ogilvy guy. All right? You can spot a Halbert guy. You can spot a Carlton guy. You can spot, they're of the hidden benefit school. They're reason why advertising. You can spot it. Right? That's how pedantic it all becomes when we focus on mechanics. Now, structure is important, but to me, the dominant thing that affects a sale, successful influence, whatever, is have we tapped into the psyche of the audience we're attempting to persuade? Have we connected with what's going on in there, or are we a peddler with a wagon of stuff and we are going to pitch this stuff-centric, as best we can pitch the stuff? I very often, for clients, I write sales letters for products that don't yet exist. This prohibits me, fortunately, from defaulting to features and benefits and facts, because there are none when I start. I am much more interested in who the buyer's going to be and what we can say to that buyer than I am what the thing is that we are going to sell them. So we're going to talk about the secret psychology of direct response. Just so you know, you have this on page 39 in your book. These are my 4 guiding principles. So number 1 is that it takes extreme measures to compel people to act in a way that is contrary to the way they normally act. And the way people normally act is to do nothing, decide on nothing, buy nothing, run from any kind of decisive behavior. That's the way they act. So we all know this experience. You go to a store, you actually went there specifically to find something, and still when the clerk walks up to you and says, so the worst line of copy ever written for retail is, may I help you, or may I help you find something? Because 98% of the people, including you and me, even when we need help, say, no thank you, I'm just looking. The yellow feet, both people behave perfectly. Okay? The clerk spews out the worst line of copy ever written in retail. You know how you're going to answer it, and you answer it perfectly. And the clerk goes away. So we all do it. Okay? And by the way, you were conditioned to do it, which is very important. As a child, tagging along with your mother or your father into retail environments. They taught it to you, your subconscious mind internalized it, and you've been doing it ever since. So people's normal and customary behavior is to deflect, protect, run from, procrastinate about any choice, any decision, certainly any purchase. So when we're trying to break through that behavior, I believe extreme measures are necessary. When I started in speaking in 1977, there was a kind of inside profession joke. And it was, so people would ask all the time, new speakers, they still ask, gee, do I have to be funny? And the correct answer is, by the way, only if you want to get paid. Okay? And similarly, I recently had a big, long conversation with a quasi-client, fortunately, in which they pondered the need to be so hypey and so manipulative. Why do we have to do that? I said, you don't unless you want to sell something. All right? Now, if you want to sell something, you're going to have to get your hands a little bloody and a little dirty. And I hope when you do, you're selling something that is really beneficial to people. But it's extremes. Secondly, you should understand, which links to it, there's only really two kinds of copy. So copywriting actually is the first decision you make about copy is a really very simple thing. Because there's only two kinds. There's product information and there's emotional manipulation. That's it. Everything else is a subset of one or the other. All right? And if you are going to wager your house, you wager on emotional manipulation. Because the stuff that is actually bought, the buying decision, it is actually made on facts. See, none of you are here because of facts. You needed the facts. But that's not, there's all sorts of emotional reasons you came. You came because you felt compelled, because you would be noticed in your absence. You came because it was a big exclusivity, superiority argument, and you wanted to be in that group. You came for emotional reasons, whether you know it or not, because the facts could be put on a postcard. However, there'd be 6 people in the room. Now, there'd be 6, but there wouldn't be this. So there's only 2 kinds of copy. So I always divide everything into, here's the box of information, about which we are going to probably have to deal with. Now, what's the emotional manipulation stuff that's going to work with this audience? That's the area of fascination. Third, great direct response copy takes people into dark emotional places and then offers them relief by their response. So that question all the time. Well, which works better, a positive approach or a negative approach? Neither. A negative approach that brings them out the other side into a positive place. That's what works best. But a pure positive approach, lots of luck. Right? Companies keep trying it again and again and again and again. Right? They're doing it now in the home security business. So if you watch advertising for home security, it's all about having a system on your phone so when your idiot adult son leaves the house with the door open and the water running and the TV on, you can magically fix it with your phone. Right? Morons. Morons. Let me tell you how you sell burglar alarms. So in the bad old days, when burglar alarms were sold door to door, a sales crew got dropped in a neighborhood and they came in your house, knocked on the door, had a gift, and you let them in your house and you let them make a presentation. 2 weeks before the sales crew came to your neighborhood, a dead of night Navy SEAL kind of crew came. And in the bushes around all the houses, they left porno magazines, empty bottles of whiskey, and condoms. Then they sent the sales crew to sell security systems. If you leave out the whiskey bottles, the porno magazines, and the condoms, lots of luck selling security systems. Sorry. Yes, everybody should have one. Yes, there's a positive argument. But if you're going to sell peace of mind and how you feel better when you're on the road and you've left mama at home, good luck. Unless you first show them the whiskey bottles, the condoms, and the porno magazines. So dark emotional places, relief from those places by purchase. Last, great direct response copy makes people identify themselves as in one group or another. Great direct response copy is all about divide and conquer. It is all about you tell us who you are, smart, dumb, winner, loser, etc., and then we'll tell you the behavior that matches who you just said you were. People must be forced to pick. So I have a get-rich product right now, a control that's working, and the first paragraph says, frankly, few men have the balls to then participate in this opportunity. We're mailing only male lists, by the way. In New York and San Francisco, transgenders. So those are my 4 guiding principles. On page 41, here's the 7, and we may not do all 7 of them, but here's the 7 places we're going to dip into with some examples and some ideas. So there's your list. And that's the reference list you may want to keep in front of you as we go along. So, a man takes his wife and kids to Disney, the happiest place on earth. And he pays extra for a speed pass. Or he might pay even more for a private guide. That, by the way, in case you don't know it, that's the best thing you can do. It's now either $3.95 or $5.95 an hour, depending on season, and it's a 6-hour minimum, and it's worth every penny. Okay? So he buys one or the other. Let's say he buys the private guide. So he's going to drop at least $2,400 for the day for the guide. Here's why he does it. Lust. He's hoping, especially if he's been married for a long time, he's hoping for gratitude sex. Okay? Experience tells him differently, but hope springeth eternal. So he's hoping for gratitude sex. Escape. He does not want to stand in long lines in the heat with unruly, unhappy, difficult children. Esteem. He will feel better about himself by doing it. I'm a good provider. Look what a smart guy I am, because we're bypassing all these lines. He does it to buy esteem. He does it out of fear. He knows if he goes cheap, and it's a horrendous experience, he will never, ever hear the end of it. I have a friend, in his first divorce, she gets out a scrapbook the size of a Buick, Ruth. She could point to a picture 10 years old and describe how he made her cry immediately before or after that picture. Memory like an elephant, this woman. Right? When we moved him out of their apartment, everything that was hung on a wall, you took it down, there was a hole in the wall from his fist. The place looked like a piece of Swiss cheese. Right? But everybody knows they'll never hear the end of a bad experience. Right? Ever. So he's buying against that fear. Guilt. If he can afford $2,400 a day, he has almost certainly promised and reneged on an endless number of things to his family. So he's buying against guilt. Affinity. By this purchase, he is affirming something about himself. The technical term for this is validating associative choice. Because I do this, because I buy this, I am. So he is putting himself in a group. Greed. So I have an extremely liberal relative. Not really a relative, by marriage. Okay? So we can't blame my blood. He is all about equality. He's a income inequality guy. We've got to fix this. So we take them all to Disney for 3 days, and I, of course, have bought a private guide for all of these reasons. And by the way, I know I've done it for all these reasons. It's okay. I know exactly what I'm doing. Okay? And I'm pretty transparent about the first thing, by the way. So we are now, he is having the first experience with coming up to an attraction. And there is a line from here to Tupelo. Then there's the speed pass line, which is nearly to Tupelo. And we are being marched by the guy right past everybody. And they are looking. And their thoughts, some verbalized, are in one of two categories. Who the F are those people? They don't look famous to me, right? Number one. And number two, annoyance, right? So we are marched past everybody. As we are marching past everybody in this giant unequal event, he says, this is the coolest thing I've ever done. My friend Glenn Turner used to say, most women will say they don't want a mink coat, and they have all sorts of things they will immediately see when presented with one. They'll say, well, where would I ever wear it, and what will my friends think? He said, but it's very dangerous to have them try one on in front of a mirror. Right? You'll be buying a mink coat. So everybody is affected by these 7 in something as simple as buying decisions involved in a trip to Disney. So we'll look at each one. Start right here. Some of you will remember. Some of you have no earthly idea who this is. But for those of us who remember, what this does is it creates, and if you're taking notes separately, you might want to put a big box around this. One of the goals of great copy is to agitate. This agitates. This sparks all sorts of agitation. It doesn't really matter, by the way, what the agitation is. You need to achieve agitation. So I'm 59. In a few months, I'm going to click over 60 on the odometer. I look at this and I think, this is like Mona Lisa, That's not the thought I have. It's not like you're an art critic with this poster. You think about, if I was younger, if she were here in real life in the front row, I would think, you'll do. I would think, if I was younger, then I'll remember when I was younger. Right now, everybody comes. So I used to get groupies. People would come up and at a speech and want an autograph, and I'm your biggest fan. And it would be somebody pretty hot. And then it became, your mother's my greatest fan. Now it's, would you sign this book? My grandmother's your greatest fan. See, all that goes through my head when I see that. All right? That's what lust is in advertising. So it can be overt. This is one of my most famous sales letters. Don't turn to it, but it's in your book. Actually, a whole series of letters in which we reinvented a restaurant and made it all about romance. And so it's a confidential letter to the husband of the house from Giorgio, and there's fear in it, there's lust in it, there's pretty much all of the things in it. You're busy, preoccupied with work, aggravated with that dum-dum you have to deal with every day at the office, tired. Who has the time or the energy to even think about romance? 2/3 of all marriages end in divorce, and the number one reason given by divorcing women, he just didn't pay enough attention to me anymore. For you, my friend, I've got a solution. Okay? That's agitation. Okay? He knows he's not paying enough attention. Divorce? Especially the guy who's already had one. Okay? So you can only lose half so many times. Some of us have the ability to replace it, some of us don't. So lust and sexual energy is not just about sex, though. We can create lust for all sorts of things. I own this car. I should have pulled a better picture, but I own this car. This was Dean Martin. If you don't know who he is, Google him. This was Dean Martin's Rolls Royce. Right? I have no interest in having a Rolls Royce, by the way. I'm not a pretentious guy. but we're in the Imperial Palace Museum in Vegas. So Dean Martin was my father's favorite singer. So Dean Martin is programmed into me because our business was in the basement, just like was described to you yesterday if you were on the VIP tour about Marty and his kids. They described me. Okay? I was set and type by hand when I was 9. And so Dean played all the time. And the Dean show was we had a parrot that sang along with Dean. Okay? He didn't sing along with anybody else, but if you threw Dean on, the parrot went nuts. So Dean was a part of our life. And then my music taste actually stopped sort of with Sinatra and Dean, and I really don't have much interest in anything beyond that. So we're in the museum and we're walking around, and we come to Dean Martin's Rolls Royce. And so Carla, I don't use your stuff, but Carla's got a dumb phone. And it's got a camera and a toaster and whatever the hell else it's got in it. And so she takes my picture with the car, fine. And we're looking at the car, and she says, "You're going to buy this, aren't you?" Now, to be honest, it had not quite yet occurred to me. It would have, by the way, but, and she said it not in the tone I just, the tone was, "You're going to buy this, aren't you?" This does not dissuade me. This just accelerated the process of lust for this car. I am now walking, but I look like I'm okay. But inside I am not now. I am just as if Farrah appeared at the door, naked with a pizza and a little sign that said, "I have laryngitis." I am now gone, right? I am in lust for this car. I am seeing myself in this car. I am hearing Dean coming out of the stereo of the car. We haven't taken from here to there, and yeah, I'm buying this car. Not only that, I'm buying this car no matter what the hell it costs. Right? I didn't want a Rolls Royce, but I want this car. And by the time I get up the other aisle in order to inquire about it, I am predetermined by my lust to buy this car. That's what you want. You want predetermination to buy whatever you sell. Second thing. So these are the only guys ever to be in a POW place and not want to escape. For those who don't know, Google Hogan's Heroes. Go to YouTube. So these are the only guys who didn't want to escape. Everybody else wants to escape, at least on some days. The Sally something, the famous therapist, her name is now eluding me, but she and her husband were married for 50 years, and she said the secret was neither one of us wanted a divorce on the same day. But everybody wants to escape. It's a great Earl Nightingale story. I heard it when I was very young. He did not tell it to be a marketing story, but I got its marketing lesson. One of the things Brian spoke to you about with Marty, is Marty extracted lessons from things and extracted often different lessons from things than most people would get. So Earl told it as a success story, sort of how not to behave. But I got the marketing lesson. So the story, briefly, is that there's two farmers. They have adjoining farms, big farms, and Farmer Bob, every morning, his habit is to make himself a big mug of coffee and walk out to the highest hill in his farm and survey his property. And in doing so, he also, of course, could see the neighbor's farm, which, to his enormous frustration, had much greener pastures than did his farm. He didn't notice, but Farmer Sam next door actually had exactly the same habit. He would get a big mug of coffee. He would go to the highest hill on his farm. He would stand on it. He would survey his farm. And in doing so, he would notice Farmer Bob's farm and how much greener its pastures were than his. One day they meet up in the feed mill in town and they adjourn to the bar and they have a few beers and this revelation occurs and they swap deeds. And so Farmer Bob goes home to Farmer Sam's place, and Farmer Sam goes home to Farmer Bob's place, and the next morning they get their steaming cups of coffee, they walk out to the highest hill, they survey their new farm that had greener pastures, and to their shock, overnight, the farm next door has greener pastures than theirs. Everybody thinks the farm next door has greener pastures. Pretty much anything you see at a distance has greener pastures. Right? Women look at Brad Pitt, look at their husband, greener pasture. Right? Of course, they haven't tried living with Brad Pitt for a decade. It might not turn out to be a greener pasture. Same thing the other way. Look at Angelina Jolie. Look at your wife. But this is a woman who, like, what are they up to? 52 kids? They're running some kind of orphanage over there. I don't know what they're doing. 5 houses. She can't be cheap to keep. But it looks like, so everybody thinks the other guy has it easier. When we run mastermind groups for mixed breed of dog, everybody's in different businesses. At the end of the first meeting, everybody wants to get in the other guy's business. All right? It's a thing you have to control. All right? Because everybody thinks this. This is called a pre-existing condition. And you want to use pre-existing condition to your advantage. So I rarely sell, I try not to sell improvement. I try to sell escape. So here's a simple example. This is what the actual piece looks like. It's a knockoff of Dr. Seuss all the way through. This is a seminar sales letter that was very successful. But I just want to show you, and this happens to be in your book. You don't have to turn to it now, but it is on page 133. So this is selling restaurant owners coming to a big conference for restaurant owners. Here's a couple of lines of copy about this particular speaker and what she is going to present. Awaken to new, bigger, better, more exciting business opportunities hidden right in your own restaurant. This is even better. Smoothly running operational systems that she and Doug are taking vacations, plural vacations. Restaurant owners, you understand, never take vacations. Taking vacations, plural vacations, all over North America without worry. Now understand, quickly zero in on what I'm not selling. I'm not talking about how to make more money in your restaurant. I'm not talking about how to make your restaurant more prominent. I'm not talking about how to make your restaurant business more secure. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. I'm talking about more vacations. Escape from the restaurant. Why? Because a goodly number of days they want to escape. I rarely talk about business improvement. I talk about business replacement when I'm doing B2B. I'm now, and there's a bunch of it in your book, and I'll show you some of it. I'm now doing a bunch of work right now for the state of Oklahoma, aiming at businesses in other states, why you should pick up and move to Oklahoma. This, by the way, is not an easy sell. Right? However, what helps me is the pre-existing condition in the CEO mind, the CFO mind, the plant manager mind. Okay? He may have no attraction when we begin towards Oklahoma, but I do know what he has. He wakes up a goodly number of mornings wishing he wasn't in Illinois. So I got to sell Oklahoma as an escape. That's what I got to sell. Next we have esteem and inadequacy. So this ad, a version of this ad, this is an ad that sells shoe lifts. You put them in your shoes and you appear to be taller. This is the male version of the padded bra. That's what this is. All right? This is, their number one customer is Tom Cruise. This ad, or some version of this ad, has been appearing in print since the Civil War. Maybe before that, I have, in my swipe file, from Harper's Weekly, which was the USA Today of the time. It was a national newspaper published during the Civil War. I have almost this identical ad. There is not a month it doesn't run. Plus, it's all over the internet. Right? Why? Why on earth would you buy things to put in your shoes to make yourself look taller than you are? Because you don't like the way you feel because you're short. That's why. Now, people make practical arguments for it. There's surveys, taller men get elected to president and, yada, yada. That has nothing to do with this. This is the man's padded bra. This is Botox stuck in your shoe. That's what it is. This is totally an esteem issue. That's what it is. And it is an inadequacy issue. So I'll show you some great copy. I think it's great copy. It's produced well. So this is an ad. I'm going to show you this. This is an ad aimed at chiropractors to sell them a practice transformation system. Actually, a franchise. Okay? So the first thing I'll point you to is the photograph, which has a sign that says reserved for MD parking only. Okay? Then the rest of it's not very subtle. Aren't you and your staff sick of being third-class citizens in the world of healthcare? It's about time you decided you deserve, quote, a real doctor's, unquote. You can't say anything worse to a chiro, by the way. Okay? A real doctor's financial success and security. You and your staff deserve prestige. Here's a version of it. This is for financial planners. I'll just point you to the second one. Doesn't it grind your gears that far less experienced, less expert advisors and simple salesmen masked as advisors are getting in your way? And this line right down here, you rightfully expected there to be a clear-cut differentiation gap between you and all these losers, and it's not there. Right? Now, I could talk to them about how to make more money, which is what most people would do. See, I understand where most writers would start is with our default list. All right? So what's the program we're going to sell them? Oh, what are its features? Oh, they get a book, they get a TV show, they get a DVD, they get, okay, so now, well, okay, the DVD is produced by an Emmy-winning producer. See, that's where everybody would start. Right? And they would start with making the business better, and you'll be able to generate more prospects and all that. That is not going in, grabbing something, twisting it, punching it, making somebody feel something. This makes them feel. And it immediately agitates what's boiling in the back anyway. They are. It does grind their gears. That guy that's been in a financial advisory, he's been in community for 30 years. He's taken care of the third generation of customers. It grinds his gears that some wet behind the ears schmuck who couldn't do a financial plan with a gun held to his head, who's selling everybody the same annuity. It aggravates, it pisses him off to be head-to-head with him, two newspaper ads side by side. You can't tell them apart. He stomps around. Now, he doesn't do it every day because he doesn't see it every day. But it doesn't take much to remind him of it. And now he wants to do something about that. It almost doesn't matter again now what I got. If I do a good enough job with this, he don't care. Fred Katota jokingly said, as he passed me in the hall out here when Brian had already started, that people were taking my name in vain in here, and he was defending me. And I yelled to him, don't bother. I'm a hooker. As long as I get paid, you can use me any way you want. Hate me, like me, I don't care. Just spell the name right on the check. Largely, this becomes the same game. Guy doesn't care what the answer is. He cares there's an answer to this because we agitated the crap out of him about it. But he really doesn't care now much what the answer is. That's really a secondary issue. Poor selling leaves it as the primary issue. Brilliant selling leaves it as the secondary issue and goes for the jugular. This is, again, this is also in your book. Don't go to it. You don't need to, but it's page 153, so you have it. I did a lot of work for Miracle Ear. They sell hearing aids. This is a product nobody wants. Not only don't they want it, they don't want to admit that they need it. Right? Why? Because it's, for the man, it's emasculating. For the woman, it is a terrifying acknowledgement of age. Right? It's embarrassing to have. Nobody wants this stuff. Right? So I happen to have, as the founder of the company, a real-life World War II hero. Guy shot down twice in France, escaped, crawled under the barbed wire, yada, 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 blew more people out of the air. I mean, so let's see, served time in a prison camp, flew during the Battle of the Bulge, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He's got a Bronze Star, a Purple Heart, Distinguished Service Cross, et cetera. That's who this guy in this picture that you can't see up there, but you'll see in your book is. So I used him to make an argument that going and getting a hearing aid is an act of courage, not an act of shame. I'd flip it. Now, nobody gives a rat's ass. This company thinks they do. Nobody cares. The thing's made of chromium, and it's got the latest digital technology, and they don't give a shit about that at this point, because they don't want one. So why do I care what it's made of? I don't want it. I don't even want to admit I need it. I don't care if it's digital, mono, if it's got a little squirrel inside who repeats what I can't hear. See, I don't care about that. I don't want it. I have got to psychologically manipulate this 68-year-old person to want it before any of that matters. Because the salespeople are so bad, they have to be in lust for it when they come in for the exam. Or we're not going to close many sales. This is, I mentioned Oklahoma. I'll go back to it now. So this is, and they're very good at it, and they happen to be now a direct competitor of mine, which I wish they weren't. So this is Rick Perry's ad running in Illinois for the state of Texas. Right? Say what you will about him, but he's not subtle. So this is his ad. All the way to Texas. Whoever, they get it. Now, if you look at everything all the states are putting out, if you saw it all, if you had a company and they were soliciting you, and you saw all the other states, including my client, which I am busily fixing, what are they putting out? All the same crap about we're rated by CNBC as the third best place to live. We have right to work. We have 56 community colleges. It's this list of product, service, features, benefits, price, and discount will pay you to come. They're all the same. But that doesn't move anybody. So I'll show you quickly some of the early Oklahoma work. It's all in your book, by the way. I think everything. Well, I'll tell you. So this is on page 74 in your book, by the way. So this is a lead generation ad. Appear in print, a new calculation, a state's vulnerability and danger research report is now available. All right? I'll just read you a little bit of the fear copy. The end of the first paragraph says, don't move into a nut house. Right? In this paragraph, there's a very dangerous place for your business to be. In this paragraph, at minimum, desperately hungry governments look at you and lick their chops. These wildly irresponsible political leaders are like crack addicts. They will take the money they need to feed their habit from anybody they can get by any methods they can, and that means you. I ain't subtle either. This is a lead generation letter to CFOs. You, the CFO, are under attack. Your ability to protect profits, finance growth, increase value is under assault as never before. Like a noose tightening around your neck. There's also a bunch of esteem copy. This is the lead. This is an actual lead. I'm showing you a copy. This is an actual lead generation letter going to the CEO on the Secretary of State's stationery. And here's the fear paragraph. Delegating it to others. So one of the things we have to overcome. So what's our pre-existing condition with a CEO? What do CEOs do? Delegate shit. That's what they do. All right? They don't really do anything. That's the secret of being a CEO. All right? They don't do nothing. Watch Obama. He's a perfect CEO. Give speech, play golf. He's got it. All right? Got it. Goldman Sachs, as soon as he's out of there, boom, head of a department. All right? That's what CEOs do. We, however, want the CEO involved in the process because the lower level people ain't going to recommend Oklahoma. I have no prayer. Nobody wants to be laughed out of the room. I need the CEO engaged. So I got to scare him about his normal and customary behavior because I want him to behave in a very different way. Now, if you start building a marketing message with the default list, you never do this. Your writers will never do it. You have to start with this stuff. So, delegating it to others to narrow it down to a couple of choices may bluntly not be the smartest thing you've ever done. Esteem statement. No one has your vision for your business. No one else will ever think of this as a hire. One paragraph down, subhead. Right here. A serious warning from other CEOs. They wish they'd been more personally involved from start to finish. I then have a CEO horror story, as you would expect. Here's the CFO version of the same piece, because the CFO is different than the CEO, and he has different pre-existing conditions. First of all, he loves to talk about money. He's a CFO. He's a bean counter guy, right? So what does he wake up? He likes beans. That's what he likes. So is there such a thing as a smart money state? Is there information about choosing a state that site selection experts and other advisors aren't telling you? Now, you guys all know that one from the consumer side, right? Until he went to jail, it was driving a lot of sales for Kevin Trudeau, right? Boardroom, bottom line, often returns to secrets they don't want you to know. Does it work with the CEO of a Fortune 1000 company? You bet it does. Okay? Fear is fear is fear. Okay? This is an ad. It's running in Forbes, private jet magazines, high affluent. It's for a wealth manager client of mine who wants clients who are selling or have sold a company for $20 million or more. Okay? So here's the ad. Forbes actually didn't want to take it, which is always a great sign. You know, I love that fax from my client. Forbes wants us to change this or that. They find this a little unseemly. I'm going, great, right? Great. All right? When a man sells his company, conflicting advice flies, vultures circle, unseen peril lurks. Pre-existing condition here, a guy at that level already has advisors. Even your most trusted advisors may not tell you, may not even know. It's a good fear statement down here. If not careful, you will put money that cannot be replaced in, Right? So this ad is all fear-driven to a free report. Here's the broader version of this that we're running it in newspapers all across the country. And losing your fortune, it can happen to anyone. Over and over, persons acquiring large sums of money find themselves bereft and penniless as a result of poor advice, needy and indulgent family members, impatience, overconfidence, and ego. Guy privately, he might not be ready to publicly say it. He says, I got all them things. I got indulgent family members. Oh, I got them. I think I'm getting shitty advice. I'm impatient. I got an ego. This is another B2B example. This is to the hospital industry. This is an Obamacare campaign. You may not know it, but there's billing codes that are used in every hospital, right? They got to bill for stuff with codes. So what Obamacare does to codes, let me give you the exact number. Right now, just for a certain category of codes, they're called ICD-10. It currently contains 3,824 procedure codes. Under Obamacare, it leaps to 141,747 codes. All right? So right now, there's like 4 for an ankle injury. Now there's 120. And it's got to be just right or you don't get paid. All right? So this is the cover of the CEO report, the coding crisis 2015, because they postponed it, by the way, to a year. Another executive order. Top-down problem solving before it's too late. D-Day, which stands for Disaster 10-1-15. This is the CFO version. How to stop the new coding crisis from traumatizing your hospital and wreaking financial havoc. This is the department head from traumatizing your department. This entire thing is a giant scare cell. Follow-up piece, by the way, this is a CFO version. Warning, if you think you got a reprieve with extension from October this year to October next year, think again. Because what is their normal and customary behavior the minute they got the reprieve? Push this aside. Let's work on something else. Real bad for my client. Awful for me because the reprieve came right after I'd written all the copy. I said to myself, it's not bad enough. You're robbing me with tax policy. You've got to actually come into my work and screw with it. So now I had to deal with, I'm going to procrastinate on this now. These are a couple quick fear examples. This is from an arthritis goop campaign. So one is, this is all drawn, by the way, from a 1 hour and 26-minute online video that converts at 26%. This block of copy here is all, we have a doctor, an MD, who played for the San Francisco 49ers and has a Super Bowl ring, who is delivering this fear message, which is all about prescription drugs and what they do to you. Right? So that's what I call fear from authority. Right? In the same one, we have fear by story. This is a story. Stories like this, one, are a lot more common than you know. Other than suffering from joint pain, a 50-year-old man, seemingly in good health, saw his legs swell up suddenly. Hours later, he was life-flighted to a hospital. Blood clot moved from his leg to his lungs. Hours later, he was being kept alive by a tube. Days later, he was dead. No one will say definitively that his blood clot was a side effect of the painkillers he was swallowing 2, sometimes 3 times a day, but blood clots are a known and acknowledged occasional side effect of painkillers. Right? The good news is they don't hear the word occasional. Only the FTC and the FDA. So that's all fear. Guilt. So next we have guilt. So how many of you have seen the TV commercial for the automated cat toy? Oh, come on. Really? Are you guys living in lead caves? You ordered it. There you go. Great. Okay. By the way, Fred's here. Greg may be here by now. So it's now the Electronic Retailing Association. It used to be the National Infomercial Marketing Association. They have an annual convention, and they have an award show at night. I went, but Renker wouldn't let me sit at the front table with Renker. A guy by the name of Dave Petito and I were put way in the back because we couldn't not laugh. they take this incredibly seriously, okay? It looks like the Emmys or the Oscars, and everybody's dressed up, and where you're seated in the room matters, and now there's awards, right, by category. So it's like best product, best infomercial for a product that scoops shit. And there's 4 entries. So there's the cat litter pan that cleans itself, and there's an electronic-powered scooper show, and there's 4 entries. They show a clip of all 4 of the entries, and everybody applauds, and then the presenter and the winner is, and up on stage comes the guy who wrote the show, the guy who invented the cat pooper scooper, his mother, and they all give a little speech. It looks just like the Oscars, right? So I cannot take this seriously at all. If you don't know it, by the way, the porn industry has the same as an identical version of this. And so, best oral sex scene with 5 or more people. And they show 4 clips, and the winner comes up. Her mother's in the front row. She thanks her mother. It's high comedy. You can get it on pay-per-view, by the way, and I recommend it at least once. But anyway, so if you haven't seen the automated cat toy, it's a plastic thing with a little stuffed mouse on a thing, and it's battery operated, and it runs around in a circle, and the cat chases it. Okay? Even if I'm doing a 1-minute commercial for this, if it's me, I'm talking to you about guilt. You leave your cat home all day. You go off and go to Starbucks and go to exciting things. The poor cat's stuck at home with nothing to do. He's anxiously waiting for you to come back. Then a lot of nights you're too tired to play with him. You don't really care for your cat properly. I'm selling guilt to sell that toy. Right? I love guilt. Right? And as a pre-existing condition, who among us is not walking around guilty about something? And most of us have things we are repetitively, reoccurring, almost continually guilty about, because we're not such great folks. If we have a sense of ethics, we worry about it some, which is good, helps us, right? This is from a client of mine in the get-rich in real estate business. Here's my guilt line. It's in a whole paragraph. The paragraph starts with the average adult male life expectancy is 72. If you are, for example, now 53, you have only 19 years left. Does this sound, I'm not a subtle person. Does this sound like a lot or a little? And then there's some questions. Here's the guilt one. How often do you want to say, I can't take that much time away, and see the disappointment in others' eyes? Who hasn't? Who doesn't? Only really poor people. They're there all the time, but we don't want to sell to them anyway. But anybody who's doing much of anything does it all the time. This is copy I wrote for Renker, for Proactive. So Proactive, as you undoubtedly know, and if you don't know, you will before you get out of here, is the world-leading brand of Acne Glop. Glop. It's a technical term. So again, who really cares? And by the way, we have this argument. Who really cares about the microbeads? The technology that who really? Guilty mom. So this is, I'll just stay home. Here's my headlines. Again, she says, I think I'll just stay home. Here's the better ones. Mom, does your daughter hide her face? Mom, does your daughter hide her face in shame? Mom, does your daughter hide her face and cry? Mom, does your daughter hate her face? I would do, Mom, does your daughter hate her face and hate you? See, because here's what I want. I want them not caring about the thing. Glop, pill, laser device, witchcraft, book of spells. See, that should be the least important part of this puzzle. Mom suddenly feeling like a shitty mother. All right? That's what you want. All right? That's the objective. She should be like just, And I've had I had a model, my wife. See, we don't have little kids anymore, but I was married to her. Our daughter was 9 when my stepdaughter, her daughter. So, I've watched her. Right? And she happens to be like the most ethical person on the planet. She's in that 5%. If a loaf of bread fell off a truck and she was starving, she'd limp down the road to catch up to the truck to give the guy his bread back, right? This is my wife. Okay? Much better person than I am. There's no prayer of us being in the same universe in the afterlife. I've told her, good news, right? When this is done, you're liberated. So I was able to watch her, right? Just so easy to guilt her. Jennifer got really good at it. I would watch it and I would think, that's good shit. What you just did to your mother is like brilliant. Here's a 20 on that date she's letting you go on that you shouldn't be going on with the guy you just got out on parole. Here's an extra 20 because that was magnificent. That's what I want. So next we have affinity. Right? There is research to indicate that there is even a biochemical reaction to affinity. That people actually have biochemical positive reactions to being part of a group that they feel good about. They also have biochemical reactions to being stuck in a group they don't feel good about. They are immediately defensive about it. And they want to do something to get rid of that defensiveness. That's why kids, you don't have the guts. So I lived in my teen years in a community called Richfield, Ohio, which is halfway between Cleveland and Akron. And the street we lived on ended and went down into a valley, and it went down on a winding, steep road with no fence on this side, and basically a cliff into a forest. One of our Friday night activities was seeing who could drive down that road the fastest, blindfolded, with a navigator in the passenger seat helping us. You could be dumber. I've actually done dumber things than this, but it's a high hurdle. I'm the champ. 3 times I won. Because they dare you, right? You don't have the chops to do that. Well, yes, I do, right? This is also how somebody almost got me to parachute jump. So that's this. We call it man or mouse copy. So here's the information you requested. As I cautioned, most chiropractors won't want any part of this. I work well only with equally pragmatic, profit-motivated, business-oriented chiropractors. Guy says, that's me. Now, he isn't, by the way. We're going to make him into that. So affinity is either positive or it's negative, but affinity works again and again and again. This is a client of mine that sells to dentists. So this is the map of all 220 doctor's offices that he had a trainer in last month. So you might find somebody you know, number one. You certainly will find a place you know. Plus there's safety in numbers. This is an affinity template. This is a kind of piece I do a lot. This happens to be a financial advisor piece. It doesn't make any difference. This is called What Kind of People Rely on Fill in the Blank. Okay? And so we then show them somebody they can identify with. So there's retirees, understandably worried about an uncertain future. And then there's a bunch of copy about how you can have money that you can't run out of until you die. Retirees who want complete peace of mind about their finances so they can fully enjoy life, then there's a bunch of copy about how you just hand over all your money, put it on autopilot, forget it, don't watch the news anymore. Seniors with a need for income from their life savings without undue risk, then there's a bunch of copy about how we create income. Okay? Investors still seeking growth. Women responsible for their own finances, or, this is one of my best lines, or who may become responsible for the finances. Right? She's like counting the days. Right? She's like counting the days. Right? She gets it right away. Right? That's a positive, hopeful statement. People with, very good, okay? Too bad there's so few. But people with tax bombs. This is all about people who got 401ks. People with health problems or family histories of serious medical problems. Present business owners, retired business owners, okay? So somebody goes through there, they find the one they have affinity with, and they read the stuff for the person they have affinity with, and they feel reassured because she is directly called out to them. I use this in all sorts of places. This is kind of an interesting one. This is a coaching client of mine. He's a marketing guru to pastors, to churches. And so this is a big affinity pitch. Senior pastors only, are you ready to go renegade? Okay. Being a renegade pastor is about abandoning average to pursue God's best for your ministry. The average church in America is declining by 9% every year, behind on budget, and unable to move forward with their kingdom plans. The average pastor is stressed out, and then it goes into most pastors will not be able to handle this, and it's not for everybody, and it's if you're weak-minded, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's a big affinity pitch. We'll do greed very quickly. It's the one you're most familiar with, is greed. So put 100 billionaires in a room and ask them if they need more money. What are they all chasing? And they'll do stupid shit. Right? So I'm a big believer that we should have a penitentiary in America, the prison for stupid. Right? You don't really go there for the crime you commit, because it's sort of trivial, but you go because you're so damn dumb. Right? Martha Stewart, loaded. Right? Can't run out of money. Impossible. And the ability kind of to make as much as she wants. Right? What does she do? She knows she's doing insider trading. A stupid stock tip undoes a stock deal in order to save, I don't know, 30 grand, 40 grand. That's like you and I worrying about whether to tip a buck or two to the guy out there on the curb. Off to jail she goes for obstruction of justice. Now, I think the crime's bullshit, but go to the prison for the stupid. All right? I'm all for it. All right? If you go Google a thing called the Homestake Oil Swindle, so at your leisure, do it, and find the list of all the people who invested. Now, Madoff is more current. You know about Madoff. And a bunch of people who should know better invested with Madoff. They pale by comparison to the stupidity of otherwise smart people who put money in Homestake Oil Swindle. And if you really want to have some fun, get the book and read it. It's a hobby of mine, by the way. So I like the show American Greed that's on CBS. This is a hobby of mine. So the Homestake Oil deal, it was kind of an Enron. It was the story before Enron. So it was about how we're all going to get rich in this energy. And they went out in Palm Desert, for example, and they put pink pipes, blue pipes, and white pipes, big plastic pipes, crisscrossing each other. They didn't go anywhere. They stuck in the ground. Nothing's happening. Flew these nitwits over it in helicopters and took their money, like the Secretary of the Treasury, like the Dean of Harvard. Right? That's whose money they took. Bob Hope. Bob had more money than there is money. And he's investing in a flyover of pink, white, and purple pipes in the middle of the Palm Springs desert, which he owns half of Palm Springs. Go stick a pole in your backyard somewhere and see if oil spurts out. There's no oil there. Greed. Greed. So, A lot of people don't do greed motivation in marketing because they think their customers are smarter. Oh, I sell to sophisticated people. So I'm going to show you a piece I didn't think was going to work with a particular list. So this piece is for a client of mine. It beat my previous 7-year control. It's kicking ass and taking names. Right? For those of you that look over your shoulder, my newsletter, you've already seen it. But this was built to mail to opportunity seekers. These are blue-collar, bottom of the white-collar tier people who have day jobs and either as fantasy or an occasional exercise of activity will do some kind of business. So they get multi-level, they try to buy real estate, etc. That's who this was written for. I have a different piece entirely that I wrote for the Investors Business Daily crowd. Right? This beats the piece I wrote for the Investors Business Daily crowd with the Investors Business Daily crowd 2-1. Here's its cover. Big money in big chunks. It would almost be embarrassing if I was subject to such a thing. As hard as it will be to believe, editor, as hard as it should be as hard as it will be to believe, you could make as much from 4 hours work with these kinds of transactions as you do from 40 hours, et cetera, and I'll prove it. The Investors Business Daily crowd. Here is an ad from, this is Investors Business Daily. Okay? This is for a long-time client of mine. His first ad, which started his business, by the way, just as a quick piece of trivia, this is from Forbes many, many years ago. Former Iowa prison guard shows investors how to escape financial prison and truly profit from America's heartland. Okay? What's key about that is its story. This is in Forbes, keep in mind. Right? Here's the current ad in Investors Business Daily. Paranoid Iowa banker reveals 4 simple investments he uses that produce double-digit returns in any economy. Here's a great line. Produce a safe 13% plus overall return year after year and continue to do so. Alarm bells should go off from here to Tupelo. Now, to be fair, he actually does it, but you ought to be really skeptical. That's why Madoff was bullshit. Same return every year. Huh? Right? Fine print, it's about an average, but you'll get to that later. Okay? But it should send people running away. No! So he just sent me a fax. He just sent me a fax, actually, on August 29th. Here's somebody this ad snared. You would actually know the name, some of you. Okay? So the guy came to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where it's a good thing to have investment real estate there because nothing happens. That's the deal. It's like a big CD. Nothing happens. Doesn't go up, doesn't go down, nothing happens. Guy comes to Cedar Rapids, Iowa after some back and forth. And most people don't come. They just send him money. But this guy comes. Okay? Starting out, because many people lie to everybody in the finance community, talking about buying maybe a couple of apartment buildings, spending $500,000. Right? He's bought $15 million worth of property. Darren's problem is he's out of inventory. There's only so much shit to buy in Cedar Rapids. All right? The guy came from this ad. He's an extremely sophisticated entrepreneur in the tech industry, Silicon Valley. Right? Don't think greed doesn't work. Don't ever underestimate the power of greed. I want to mention so you might want to make a little side note because we're not going to do it. On pages 205 and 206 in your manual, you'll see a thing called progressive sequence of agreement. It's another copywriting approach I use. And it's relatively self-explanatory in there, so you can go to it on your own. By the way, your manual's loaded with examples that track these 7 categories. Where here's a tribute to Marty, who was not a close friend, but he was a great friend of mine. Marty, so you saw some of you on the VIP tour. His offices are just bigger than mine, but they look, mine are cluttered with. Marty was a great pack rat. Okay? He was a fabulous acquirer and collector and organizer of things that had lesson meaning to him, in many cases that had no lesson meaning to anybody else. But he was a great student to the very end. Most people stop. They reach a certain point, their business is functioning, they're making money, they think they're like too smart for the room, they stop. He never stopped. Trump asked me backstage, Trump said, what 3 books are you reading now? Now that is such a fabulous question. First of all, it's flattering. Okay? Secondly, it suggests he's reading 3 books at the same time. It also tells you he's hunting, he's searching, he's hound dogging was the term Brian used all the time. It's possible this guy might know something, be aware of something I don't know. I rattled off 3. He nodded at 2, turned to his hanger-arounder assistant with the 3rd one, said, get me that from Amazon. That's like Marty all the time. So if you're not that kind of a student, I don't think you can really be a great marketer. The other thing is, as you heard many, many times, Marty was all about gratitude. He was a very grateful person. I want you to know very seriously, my 42 years at this, if it wasn't this, I'd be wearing a paper hat saying, you want to supersize those fries. I have no capability to hold a job. I have no qualifications to hold a job. Nobody would hire me today. I laugh all the time when I see Guthy-Renker's ads in DM News to hire marketing executives for Guthy-Renker, who I did a lot of work for over the years, and neither Bill Guthey, Greg Renker, or I could get hired based on the educational requirements that are now in the ads for their employees. I find this amusing. Right? So I honestly am very grateful for this career that I have had. I'm always grateful for an audience because working to an empty room is no fun. And that you guys, many of you came in part or because you wanted to see me, that you continue to have interest in me. And those of you new who do now, who will evidence it or not, will know. I am extremely grateful to you and to Brian for the opportunity to be here, and I believe you now have a lunch break. Thank you.
That, it wasn't a workshop session in a way, but if you were following, is that book incredible? We're giving away a couple of binders later. I'm going to try to out Dan with the stuff that you're going to take away. The shipping's going to cost you, but it's worth it. You get this stuff home. That book it's gold. There's like gold on every single page of that.
You should see the archive.
I can imagine. I've seen his life. I've seen it. He said he does his life's work in binders, and you got to follow what he's telling you to do. And he's giving you the manual. He ain't going to write it for you, and you can't afford him. So, and the offer is there. We're not doing pitching at this event, but I just thought that Dan's stuff is just so critical to everything that we do as direct response marketers that was part of what I wanted to do here. And I thought that was an incredible presentation. So thank you again, Dan.